Hello everyone, and welcome to this workshop today on paragraph development. So my name is Kieran. I am one of your English support tutors on the Manchester campus of Elizabeth School of London. And I'm here today to walk you through the steps of creating the perfect paragraph. So it might be that you already feel like you know this, but we're just here today to improve some of those things, try to get it better and take it to a higher level. Okay, so we're going to be having a look at paragraph structure and also coherence, about making sure that it has a nice logical structure that fully communicates the idea that you want to get across. So first of all, we're going to start off with a philosophical question about what actually is a paragraph. So think about this for a moment. What should a paragraph look like? What should it include? What should it not include? So they are some interesting questions to ask, but let's think about the answers that come with them. Okay, so a paragraph is a group of sentences that convey or that develop one single idea. Okay? If you are starting to introduce another idea, that is when you should start a new paragraph. Also, a paragraph, it says here, is a group of sentences. So in general, I mean, not always, but in general, it should be 2 or more sentences. And like we just mentioned then, each paragraph should include one main idea that is developed enough for it to have a wide understanding. All right, so that is how we are going to develop this idea now. We know what a paragraph is. Let's take it a little bit further and see where we go to. But to begin with, we are going to be having a look at a little video. And this video is going to be about CSR. So it even tells us here on the screen that CSR is corporate social responsibility. But what does that actually mean? Well, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but at the end of the video, I'd like you to think about those ideas. The second thing I would like you to think about is why it is important for a business to include the ideas of CSR. Okay. So what we'll do now is we will watch the video and I would like you to think about those 2 questions. Okay, so keep those questions in mind while you are watching the video. All right, so let's just get that video on screen for all of us. And I'm just going to share the sound so that everybody can hear it. We will also see the subtitles on screen as well. Good. So we'll watch the video and think about those 2 questions. What is CSR and how is it useful for businesses? Also, almost specifically, why is it important for businesses? Okay, so let's begin.
About CSR, corporate social responsibility. What exactly does it mean? Global warming, diminuted natural resources, the extinction of various animal and plant species, global population increase, and migration. Amongst others, these are some of the real environmental and social issues we face today. How can we address these issues whilst ensuring food, education, and health for all? How can we ensure that economic development and technological progress benefit the greatest number of people? Faced with these challenges, a more sustainable, developmental approach becomes necessary. This requires the commitment of all international organisations, governments, associations, companies, citizens. Everyone is concerned. And in practice, what can a company do? The overall goal is to combine economic progress, social justice, and environmental preservation. Based on its corporate social responsibility, a company can ensure that its economic growth is beneficial to everyone: its suppliers, employees, customers, the local population, in short, all its stakeholders, whilst minimising its impacts on the planet. Depending on the sector of activity, the specific issues and challenges differ from company to company. Let's take a pharmaceutical company. It can act responsibly in many ways. For example, offer to as many people as possible safe and quality medicines, take into account the needs of patients by supporting them throughout their healthcare. And for all companies, being responsible also means taking care of its employees and ensuring their safety at work. It also means being compliant with the application of the various laws and regulations, as well as defining ethical business practices. It also means reducing the environmental impacts of its production sites and choosing less polluting modes of transport. Thus, the ambition for a responsible company is to contribute to an economically efficient, socially equitable and environmentally sustainable development whilst ensuring its profitability and economic growth. As such, corporate social responsibility, CSR, is now recognised as a real performance driver, particularly because it encourages innovation, reduces costs, and brings employees together around a meaningful project. Within our daily activities, both individually or collectively, we can all be part of this evolution, and that's what's really inspiring. And at Servier, CSR is a conviction, resulting in concrete actions implemented with enthusiasm.
Okay. So we watched that video there, which explained to us what CSR, what corporate responsibility, corporate social responsibility is. Okay. So thinking about those questions, then we could come up with a paragraph. Okay. So our idea was, what is the main idea discussed in the paragraph? So let's read through it together here. So it tells us that corporate social responsibility, CSR, can generate a positive reputation for a company, leading to possibly more sales and growth. According to Jones et al., a corporation that invests in the environmental and ethical approaches of CSR will demonstrate to the public and the media that they are a reasonable company. Watson, in 2018, provides evidence that this improves the consumer sales as customers tend to support ethical green business practice, thus improving profitability and encouraging growth. For example, a yogurt company called Yo Belly has been investing in making its products organic, creating fully recyclable packaging, and reducing its CO2 output. As a result, profits have doubled within the last 2 years, providing the company with a range of opportunities to expand. That is according to Peterson 2019. Overall, then, the evidence seems to suggest that investing in CSR can improve brand image and productivity. So what we should consider here then is, what is the main idea of this paragraph? As we said before, a paragraph should have one unified idea. So what is the main idea here? Well, the main idea here is that CSR brings some positive advantages to a company. Okay, so it goes into more detail about what those advantages are, but the main idea is just that it has some advantages. Okay, so let's consider this next thing then. Let's imagine, what does a paragraph actually contain? So a good paragraph should contain these different things. It should have at the start a topic sentence that tells us what the main idea of the paragraph actually is. It should have some supporting sentences that develop this idea. The supporting sentences should give details, and they should give examples that give some extra proof or evidence for that main point. Okay. So your supporting sentences should be logical. They should develop the idea. They should be easy to understand to take it further. Okay, and a paragraph should contain a concluding idea that summarizes the rest of the paragraph. So it's a good idea to imagine it as a hamburger, something like that. You have the main ideas in the middle, that is the meaty part. You have the topic sentence at the start, which is the bread on top. And then you've got the concluding idea at the end, which is the other part of the bun underneath. And then when you put it all together, it is something enjoyable and good to consume. So let's have a look at this paragraph again, and let's try to find some of those things that we just mentioned. So remember, we're looking for a topic sentence. We're looking for supporting sentences. We're looking for examples, and we're also looking for a concluding idea. So let's just take a minute or two, have a look at the paragraph again, and see if we can find all of those four things. So a topic sentence that explains the main idea, supporting sentences that develop it, examples which demonstrate it even better, and then a concluding sentence that summarizes the main point. So we'll take 1 or 2 minutes to find those things in the paragraph, and then we'll check the answers. Okay then, so let's have a look at those different parts of the sentence then. Sorry, different parts of the paragraph. So if we move on now then, we will see that that first sentence there, corporate social responsibility, CSR, can generate a positive reputation for a company, leading to possibly more sales and growth. That is the topic sentence that we were describing, because it states the main point of the paragraph. Now, these next two paragraphs here, according to Jones et al., and about Watson as well, they are the developing sentences. They are the supporting ones because they give more details about that main point. Okay, good. So, tells us about what does it say here? It demonstrates to the public and the media they are a responsible company. It improves customer sales, it improves profitability and encouraging growth. So that develops the idea of more sales and growth. In the yellow here, it tells us, for example, so that is easy to understand that that is part of our examples because it tells us specifically about this Yo Valley company and how integrating CSR into their company has helped to what's it done? Doubled their profits, giving them a range of opportunities to expand. Now, the last thing that we needed was a concluding idea that wraps up the points of the paragraph. And this is highlighted here by the one that begins with overall. So the evidence seems to suggest that investing in CSR can improve brand image and productivity. This leads us back to the original idea that it gives a positive reputation, again, leading to sales and growth. So this is a good example of a paragraph that has been developed that has included all of these important features. So when you are developing a paragraph, when you're writing one in general, it is good to keep in mind that coherence is needed. So coherence is making sure that your structure connects the different parts together. Okay. So we're going to look at linking and transitioning now. And as we can see here, a transition is a word or a phrase or a sentence that shows the reader that there is a clear structure and connection between ideas. So when we are writing an assignment, for example, you may want to think about transitioning between paragraphs. For example, there could be one paragraph that talks about advantages. The following paragraph talks about disadvantages. So how would you link between them? It's possible to say on the one hand, da da da, on the other hand, da da da. Okay, but there are other ways to do that as well. Another thing is inside a paragraph, you might want to think about transitioning between sentences themselves. So which words or phrases would you use in that situation? So let's first of all consider that idea here, the first one, transitioning between paragraphs. So if you are doing that, connecting two paragraphs together, you really need to indicate how the first one is related to the second one. Okay, because that will make it much easier for the reader or the audience to understand how they're actually connected. So normally, these transitional phrases go at the start of the paragraph. So the reader is immediately aware of what went before and what is going to come after. So consider this example here. The paragraph number 1 says that studying English is important because, and then develops that idea. But then the second paragraph begins with however. So when you use however, this is ringing a little bell in your mind, ding, 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 that you're going to have some opposite idea here. Okay, because the first one says studying English is important, but now we're introducing the idea of however, something contradictory. Right? So using a word like however connects the first paragraph to the second paragraph and tells there is going to be some kind of balancing of ideas. Okay, now let's consider transitioning between sentences within a paragraph. Okay, so again, doing this is important because it allows your sentences to link together, but also to add some more information. So we have this example here on the screen. At first, academic writing may appear difficult. However, it is something that you can improve. So again, we're using however to show a distinction between like a negative and a positive thing. But because this is still developing the same idea, we would include it in the same paragraph. All right. So let's go back to our paragraph before, and it had some of these transitioning phrases to take us from one idea to the next kind of sentence that we had. So it had 3 spaces in it. So let's see if we can imagine what came in those spaces. So for the first space, it tells us about this yogurt company called Yogurt Valley. So we remember that this was an example sentence. So that is why it would give us, for example. Okay, so that is a good transitional sentence because it tells us an example is coming up. for the next one, it tells us that profits have doubled within the last 2 years. Okay, so what kind of transition do we have here? Well, the original phrase was as a result. So we're looking at causes and effects. Okay? So if you are trying to give the effect of something, we could say as a result, or many other different phrases there. So for the last space, this is coming at the end of the paragraph. It's summarizing what came before. Okay, so our phrase, our transition phrase here is overall. So that gives us a nice general summary of everything that has come before it. So it might be a good time then to actually think about some examples of these linking words. Now, we do have different kinds of linking words, so it helps to break them down into which words do we use in which situations. So if we are sequencing, if we're saying what comes first or comes second, etc., then we can use the words like firstly, secondly, finally. So we can see in the example here, it's being used as firstly, ensure all necessary materials are prepared before beginning the project. The next thing that comes after would probably use the phrase secondly. The third thing would be thirdly, and so on. If we want to give some extra information, you could use the phrases additionally, furthermore, moreover, and others. Okay, so the example sentence is the team completed the initial phase of the project successfully. Additionally, they managed to stay under budget. Okay, so it's giving some extra information, not necessarily super important information, but still it is useful to have it in there. Right, the next one, the contradicting ideas. We've already mentioned how the use of however can do this, but we can also use despite, on the other hand, nevertheless, in contrast, plus some others there. So let's see how it's used in the example. So it tells us that regular exercise is crucial for maintaining good health. So that is a positive thing. But when we use the word nevertheless, it tells us there is going to be a balance here. So nevertheless is going to tell us about something negative afterwards. So many people struggle to incorporate it into their daily routines. So that is a good transitional or linking word that matches a positive with a negative. So moving on to the next one. If you want to give examples, you could use phrases like for example, for instance, or to illustrate. And as you can imagine, we use those to give examples, and you can see it there on the right. Okay. It is talking about changing weather patterns or making them more severe. And we see the example of hurricanes becoming more frequent and more intense. If we want to talk about the results of something, so we could use the phrases therefore and consequent. Okay. So we know that AI technology has rapidly advanced in recent years. We need to talk about what are the results and the consequences of this, so we use the phrase consequently. So its applications have expanded across various different industries. Okay, so if we are moving on to the last one, if we are looking to conclude or to summarize, we can use those phrases like in conclusion or in summary, or the connected one to sum up. So these encapsulate everything we have already talked about. So the example is there for us. In summary, the impact of AI on modern society is both profound and far-reaching. So maybe take a screenshot of this or pause and note down those phrases because they will be super useful for you throughout your journey through higher education. Okay, another thing for you to think about is using reference words. So these are different to what we just looked at. Those were linking words. We're now looking at reference words. So reference words are when we are repeating something throughout our paragraph or essay or something like that, but it can be quite boring to use the same word over and over and over. So what we can use are some reference words that replace those original ones. So these are usually pronouns or other phrases which we can use as their replacement. So we can see here that we've gone from they and this. So our activity now is to read this tiny paragraph here and to actually understand what those reference words they and this are actually referring to. So now let's read it all together. Why not? So corporate social responsibility, CSR, can generate a positive reputation for a company, leading to possibly more sales and growth. According to John et al., a corporation that invests in the environmental and ethical approaches of CSR will demonstrate to the public and the media that they are a reasonable company. So who or what is they in this situation? Well, it is the corporation that invests in environmental and ethical approaches. Okay. So instead of just repeating those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 words, we can just use one word, which is they. Okay. As you can understand, that is much more efficient, easier to read, and just overall a good use of your time. Next, it tells us that Watson in 2018 provides evidence that this improves the consumer sales as customers tend to follow ethical business practice, thus improving profitability and encouraging growth. So what is this in the situation? So it would be the way in which they are doing it. So it is investing in environmental and ethical approaches. So again, we're saving us a lot of words, saving us a lot of time, and just making it easy for the reader to understand what is going on. So we've just looked there at the reference words, which are this and they, but remember there are other ones we can use. So if you are referring to people, instead of repeating their names and it's an item, you could use the pronouns he, she, it, they, for example. And in a similar way, if we are talking about the possessions of those people, you could use his or her, hers, or its, their, theirs. If we are talking about the object pronouns, so the object of the sentence, you could again use her or him or them. If you are using the demonstrative pronouns, trying to differentiate between, this or that, there or these or those, if it's plural, then you use those words, this or that, these or those. And there are some other phrases you can use to distinguish between these things. So we could talk about the former and the latter. Okay. So if we are talking maybe about two industries like healthcare and education, if I use the word the former, that means I'm talking about the first of those two ideas, which is the healthcare. And if I talk about the latter, that refers to the second of those two things, which is education, I think. Okay. All right, so we've had quite a quick journey through that then. So it's always good to include your sources at the end of this kind of activity. All right, so you can see there, if you do need any more information about building paragraphs, you can follow either of those sources on screen. Okay, all right. So we are going to finish the workshop now. So thank you everybody for attending, and I hope to see you all again soon.